Support for Lab Out Loud is provided by the National Science Teachers Association. Find out more at nsta.org. It's a new school year, and that means a new season of Lab Out Loud. Today we're looking at bringing comics and graphic novels into the classroom.
To show understanding through making your own comic, you have to synthesize information. You have to ingest it and figure out, the best way that you can think to represent the material. And so I wanted to try to give some of those kids a little bit of an outlet so they can use some of their ability and be a little bit more excited about what they can do.
That's up next on Lab Out Loud, but first, I'm your co-host, Dale Basler.
And I'm Brian Bartel.
Hey, Brian, check this out.
What we do is if we need that extra push over the cliff, you know what we do?
Put it up to
11, exactly.
Hey, you know what that's from, right?
Oh, God, where does it's? I recognize it. It's on the tip of my tongue. What is it?
This is Spinal Tap.
Yes!
The famous We Go to 11 scene, which is perfect because this episode's going to 11. We're now entering season 11 of Lab Out Loud with our first guest, Chris Preece. He's a chemistry teacher, just like you, Brian, and he has made a graphic novel about chemistry called Chemistry.
Yeah, we've had some success with graphic novels on the show. Some of you may remember Terra Tempo and The Illustrated Women in Chemistry. And each of those are either in their second or third volumes.
Well, hopefully Chemistry is in line to follow suit. Let's meet its creator.
Name's Chris Preece, and I'm a high school teacher. Chemistry is my content area. I also teach integrated science. And on the side, I have been working on a graphic novel, Chemistry, and it's, to engage my students in a little bit of a different way. And I'm also a graduate student at UK, University of Kentucky, as for STEM education, and so I am working on my PhD there, and I want to study, how comics can affect chemistry education at the secondary level.
How long have you been teaching in the classroom? I'm
going into my 7th year.
Oh, I see. And so was this an idea that just came to you, that you wanted to kind of take this is something you wanted to make for your class? Yeah.
About my second year teaching, I started trying to find, sort of comic book resources for science education. And unfortunately, there's not a lot out there.
No.
And yeah. And so, in my efforts in looking for this and not finding much, like part of what engaged me in science is some of the science-based characters in comic books. So I created a website, atomicuniverse.org, and so I just started writing about the science behind these superheroes, and and then it flourished from there to me starting to write my own.
So, this starts with an idea, I'm assuming. You must have some sort of passion here with comics. I mean, are you drawing everything also?
No. Josh Reynolds is the artist on the project. He was definitely good enough to join the project, and he's been awesome to work with.
So you're writing sort of the storyline, the content, and he's helping with the artist. How does it go from idea? Because I would imagine many teachers, I think myself too, where I've thought, you know what they should have? They should make and then it's hard to take that idea into something that can actually be used in your classroom, but then what you're doing is, getting it into other classrooms so it can help even more students. Tell us about how that happens.
I feel like there should be like a teacher organic label. Like, this lesson plan was created by another teacher, not some textbook publisher. Correct.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it does bring merit to it. I mean, you are definitely using it and going through there. But how did it happen?
I really like science, and comic books are my two passions in life. Mm-hmm. And I grew up reading comics, and I just kept thinking about how there is a lack of science comic book resources to use in the classroom, and eventually I'm just like, nobody else is really making this, so maybe I'll just do it. And I started thinking about it and writing down some ideas, and trying to figure out how I was going to make it work. And it was 2 years of a lot of grinding and trying to write something down. And like, I had it about half written at one point, and I'm like, no, this is not good. And then I went back and rewrote some stuff, because originally I was writing it as sort of like a Murder, She Wrote mystery story.
Was it a typewriter?
Yes. For some reason, I'd watched a Murder, She Wrote episode, and I'm like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good thing you weren't watching like Columbo or something else like that. We got a whole different experience.
You know what about hydrogen peroxide? Oh gosh. Yeah, but okay. So ideas on paper, revisions, but how do you get that next step where it's like it becomes real, like connecting with an artist or publishing, all that kind of stuff? To me, that seems like, whoa. Where do you begin?
Oh, it was so I tried to talk to some people, and everybody has a completely different story and how to get it done and how they have gotten it done. Mm-hmm. And it was a little daunting, a bit of a daunting task. So after I got the first part of the graphic novel written, I went to freelance.com and put the job description up, and a bunch of people replied, and Josh Reynolds' work really stood out to me, and so I started communicating with him.
So it's not someone you actually knew, like you don't have a buddy who's a graphic artist, and this was somewhere you actually found out to get some. That's really ambitious.
Yeah. So I had to seek somebody out. Like, the other artists I know are they already have jobs and stuff, so they were looking,
which is a good thing.
Yeah. So that they weren't really looking for a chemistry graphic novel project. So I had to go out and find him. And then once I paid him to do the sample pages, I then packaged everything together and then sent it out to as many publishers as I could find that reasonably fit what I was doing with what they wanted. And I probably sent it out to 15 to 20 publishers at once. Okay. Got responses from about 4 of them.
So was that nerve-wracking? I mean, you had to put some of your own money down here, make a big leap of faith of time and financial investment. Was it nerve-wracking waiting for those responses?
It was. It definitely was. And then finally, when Thunderstone got back to me and told me that they loved the idea and they were, interested in pursuing it, I was ecstatic. And so then, after that, we worked out a contract and everything, and started working on and Josh agreed to start working on the rest of it. But yeah, I did have to put, a fair bit of my own money up front to get it underway, to get Josh to draw the preview pages and all that. So
you have your own like teachers pay teachers success story just personally. That's awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
I noticed also that I went to your website and you've got obviously your homepage, but you've got a tab for your class. Is that? But it's password protected, so we can't see anything there. I think it's interesting that you're kind of mixing that professional comic side of things as well as your profession of teaching as well. Why is that done?
So I wanted, when I made the site, I wanted to make sure that I used this in my classroom, and I do have the class tab there because I put up some things that that I make that I don't necessarily want to have go out in the broad internet, and so I keep that just for my students, and like they will be able to see Chem Mystery via there. They don't have to purchase their own copy or whatever. So to give some protection that people just can't.
Mom, Dad, my class comes with a graphic novel.
Well, do you have that in your like class supply list? Like you need goggles, you need a lab book, and these comic books,
and a position on DC versus Marvel.
It would be nice for the sales, but
sure.
But I just want them to be exposed to it. So
Well, you mentioned that there's not many like science comic books out there or graphic novels out there. Do you know of other ones out there? Do you use other ones or?
There are other ones out there. Jim Ottaviani has written a lot of science graphic novels. Are you familiar with his work?
No.
So he has one on Feynman, and several other topics. I think
Feynman,
one of his more recent ones is primates. So Jane Goodall and some of the other scientists.
What was the name?
Jim Ottaviani.
Ottaviani.
Actually, my favorite one of his is called
I think I found it.
Language, and it's about Niels Bohr.
It's called what?
Suspended Language. Suspended in Language.
Brian's going to have all these in the show notes because
I found it.
He loves doing that.
Yeah. So Jim Ottaviani, Ottaviana.
Wait, Ottaviani.
Yes, excuse me. I got my vowels mixed up there, but yeah, we'll look into that as well.
Terra Tempo was episode 70 for listeners who want to go back in the catalog for our show, but that was David Shapiro.
Yeah,
on Earth Science and Natural History Stories. But back to chemistry.
Yeah. So, I'm just curious. There's not a lot out there in the actual. You can't find a whole lot out there. And do you see that in other disciplines in education as well? Are they like, does Phi-Ed have like the market cornered on this or something? Or, I'm assuming no, but I'm
stand back. I'm volleyball man.
maybe like English language arts or something. I don't know. I'm just curious. This is a whole new world for me.
So just looking, in the science discipline, there's not. Or STEM disciplines, there's not a whole lot there for us. Let's see, there is, for an engineering comic, there's a comic called How-Toons, which is really fun, definitely meant for probably elementary to middle school aged kids. And they do a lot of building of things, and they have like little procedural things where kids will build stuff. In terms of math, there's a graphic novel called Logic Comics, and there's also a teacher in, I think, Indiana. I think that's where he teaches. He created his own comic for his middle school students called Solution Squad. Mm-hmm. And other than that, I mean, there's also the cartoon guides to chemistry or physics or whatever, but those aren't meant for entry level learners. That's if you already know something about the subject, and they become nice little funny cartoons for to learn from. So
tell us more about chemistry. What's the storyline going on there?
So it's about two cousins that get into an accident and get superpowers in a very classic comic book way.
Perfect.
And as they explore their superpowers that they've just acquired, they learn chemistry. And of course, they have to fight a big radioactive monster along the way. It's to be. I want to embed the science within the science fiction, so it's fun. I try not to bog down the narrative with a ton of science, so I'll put some science in within the narrative, and then anything that I feel needs more explanation, I'll put at the end. I call that the lab report section.
I saw that there's almost like a how-to section, you had a sample there there was a lab report one, and it was almost like a how to make paint or something, making paint.
Oh yeah, that's actually within the narrative. They were making some paint. One of the characters is painting with their mom, and they were making paint. But I will classify different types of matter within within the comic, but then in the lab report section, I'll sort of go over some of the definitions of what they are.
Okay.
So you can try to figure it out through the narrative, what it is and how I label the things. But for more clarification, there's the back matter.
It almost looked like there was like a how-to, like you could do this in your classroom now, kind of a thing.
Oh yes, yeah. No, that was intentional, so people can make some paint there. And there's also another one on baking a cake and some of the science behind that.
Well, wait. Now you also have these. I'm finding these worksheets. What's that all about now?
So I
can hear lesson plans being made.
Yeah. I did create this to use in my classroom, so I wanted some worksheets to go along with it, just to help guide the kids along and learning the material from the graphic novel. So this, it's to help try and reassure that they are thinking about the science of what's going on within each section of the graphic novel.
So now I'm also thinking about this in the term of, like, both Dale and I work with students in creating media, usually video and digital kind of content that way. But I think about this as a way for students to showcase their own learning in a different way than just writing down their ideas. Or do you have students that make their own graphic novels or their own comic strips from class, and does that inspire them at all?
Yeah, so I frequently or semi-frequently get them to draw like small comic strips and stuff to try to, so they can show their learning in a different way. So I definitely try to incorporate this, because to show understanding through making your own comic, you have to synthesize information. Like you have to ingest it and figure out the best way that you can think to represent the material. And so I definitely have had quite a few students come up with some creative ways of being funny and making their own little comics. And in fact, one student asked me if they could create a song instead of doing a comic. I went with it. I'm like, sure, if you really want to do that, go with it. And it was brilliant. They did a really good job. I was amazed.
Do you use these as assessments then, as a way that they can demonstrate what they've learned?
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome.
As like a sort of small, like maybe quiz assessment or formative assessment. Yeah. I definitely use these in that way.
I love to see that, and it's just we're starting to see more and more of that in education, and I'd love to see you do something like that in a science conference, whether it be NSTA or through Kentucky or something like that, where this would be a way to inspire students to engage in art and science at the same time. Dare I say STEAM here, but seriously though, it's definitely an integrated process that way.
Yeah, and I was certainly a science-minded kid, but I also try to be creative, and I felt like a lot of times it's hard to be creative in a science class. When I was taught, and so I wanted to try to give some of those more creative kids a little bit of an outlet so they can use some of their ability and be a little bit more excited about what they can do.
I think another thing, kind of to paraphrase some of the many scientists, and one of our most recent guests, Sean Carroll, is talking about science is always about a story. It's always about a story to tell, and that's what draws people to it. And here you're doing that in a different way. You're making the story around a concept and to draw people in, because we have a natural connection to stories.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of amazing stories about scientists out there, and there's a rich history there that you can dig into, and but you can also try to create your own. Like if you're talking about electronegativity and bonding, you create a story behind how fluorine is going and like beating somebody up to steal their electrons, or just and just have some. You can have fiction, a little bit of fun with fiction and science too.
Absolutely. Well, we wish you luck. The graphic novel is called Chem Mystery. And, I got to tell you, Chris, we've had a couple other graphic novelists on the show. Tara Temple we talked about. We also had Dale DeBakshi with the Illustrated Women in Science on the show a few years ago, too. And they both are at least in Volume 2 and Volume 3. So we hope to see that you are as successful and not more.
Yeah, I'm working on Volume 2 right now.
Fantastic.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Chris, for sharing with us, and we wish you most success on the project and your PhD.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
For links and other information related to this episode, visit laboutloud.com. You can send us your questions and comments at laboutloud.com/contact.
If you enjoyed the show, make sure you've subscribed on iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, or your favorite podcasting platform. And if you really enjoyed it, consider leaving us a rating or a review. Your feedback helps others find our show.
Until next time, I'm Dale Basler.
And I'm Brian Bartel.